The bulk of the cabinet construction is done, but there is a lot of finish work still to go. So let's jump right into it. Previously, I had modified the gas line to not obstruct the position of the cabinet here. With that, I moved the shutoff valve underneath the cabinet. All shutoff valves like this need to be accessible in case of maintenance on the appliance or in an emergency. I used a 4-inch hole saw blade to create a hole directly above the valve. Now it's easy to access. When I reworked the utilities a while ago, I capped the hot and cold water pipes. Now it's time to extend the copper pipes into the cabinet. I punched a hole for each pipe and then added compression valves on the ends. Easy peasy. I had to shut off the water to the house during this step, so before moving on, I bled the air out of the lines and ensured there weren't any leaks.
Good, nice.
One final hole that gets punched into the side of this brand new cabinet is for the sewer line. I punched the hole so that the pipe had a slight slope downhill. The plumbing here gets finished when the countertop is installed, which I showed in the previous video. Just before putting the countertop on, I went through and double checked the level for each floor cabinet. I adjusted the legs underneath as necessary to get it all perfectly level. I also adjusted the doors on the cabinets to line up cleanly with one another. Okay, now we're getting into some of the finish work. The quality of the work done here can really make a difference in the final look of these cabinets. So for the side panel here, I started with a piece that is larger than the cabinet needing coverage. I had a few inches to lop off the front, so I used a small ruler to get a rough scribe relative to the shape of the wall. Walls are rarely, if ever, perfectly flat. Even with a really great drywall job, there will be bumps and waves. I put a piece of tape over my line, traced it, and cut it with a small saw. I brought the piece back, figured out how much more I needed to cut, put another piece of tape and scribed it again, running my pencil along the wall to get a really accurate mark. I used a compass to mark the line again, so I'd cut off the exact amount needed for the front edge to be perfect. Now I needed to trim the top, which was much easier to accurately mark as I'm sure the countertop is a straight line. When the piece was ready, I popped it in place and screwed it in from the inside of the cabinet. And just like that, a nicely finished side panel piece with essentially no gaps. It might be a little bit of a process, but the end result is worth it. The upper cabinets have some trim pieces that can go underneath to give it more of a detailed look. The trim can either be placed more tall or flat depending on your preference. Since the vertical space is already a bit limited, I opted for the flat version. The trim is connected via screws from the inside of the cabinet. I used a countersink bit to make sure the screws went in cleanly and sat flush with the surface. For this trim piece, I left a 1/2 inch gap on the right for a small panel piece to cover the white. This upper side panel piece only had to be trimmed to the top. I was content without having to scribe the wall edge. I just had to make sure it was long enough to cover the side edge of the new trim at the bottom. The last two upper side panels were also really easy to put on. It was just a matter of getting everything to look and feel cohesive. Next up was this behemoth of a panel. This goes all the way from the floor to the ceiling, and unfortunately, Ikea, nor anyone else really, makes a panel large enough to cover this all in one go. It's okay because scribing a floor to ceiling piece would be difficult. I started by taking the largest sheet and cutting off a decent portion of it, leaving a couple inches to scribe against the wall. Just after I cut it to its final shape, I went ahead and did this. Oh man. Oops. I did get really lucky here. The only injuries were the tripod and the corner leg of the cabinet. all of which were mostly salvageable. By some miracle, the camera was unharmed, and the large panel only got a few minor scratches, which we're just gonna pretend like they don't exist. Now, the unfortunate thing about this is I cannot find the footage of the rest of the finished work. It got lost in the abyss, so you're just gonna have to trust that the rest of it went super smoothly without any issues. Those last few things are the small top panel above the large piece, some more scribed paneling to cover the side edges and top, and the floor kick plates that just snap on really easily. I'm stoked with how this room is turning out. Looking at a picture of how it looked before to now, it's hard to believe that this is the same room. Okay, that's it for now. See ya.